Today on In Her Words, Renee and I continue our little love affair with authors. We get to sit down with Elle Cosimano. Elle is the New York Times bestselling author of the Finlay Donovan series, and she is as spunky and fun and endearing as her characters. We know you're going to love this conversation.
It's good to be here.
Well, thanks for being with us. We are so excited. I am like total. I was just fangirling to Renee when before you got on. I love your book so much.
Oh, thank you.
I love Finlay so much. I want to be her.
So do I.
Right? I'm like, no, you must be her. That's my story in my head is that you are her. But I can't wait to. And I was trying to think though how I have to go. I have to really pick my brain on how I found the first book. When did the first book come out?
First book came out in 2021.
In 2021. So that's
Yeah.
probably, yeah, I mean, that's probably when I read it because because I read, just finished the third one when it came out. I'll have to think about that how I found the first one. I wonder if it was a recommendation from someone. I don't know, but whoever it was, I love them. Um,
Yeah, we have, so much of our readers come from word of mouth and local book clubs and librarians. And so, yeah.
So, Elle, why don't we dive in? It's like you've had an interesting history in terms of starting off in real estate and then diving into your author life. Why don't we kind of start with, how did you make the transition?
Yeah, it was a strange path getting here. I never imagined myself as an author. I never dared to dream it. And I went a very, very different direction out of college. I was a psychology major. I didn't really know what I was going to do, and I somehow wandered into real estate sales and marketing, and I did very, very well there. I had a long and very fruitful career, and I was also completely unfulfilled and just knew sort of in my heart of hearts that I was not doing what I wanted to be doing with my life. So I was about, more than a decade into my real estate career. I had two very small children at home and was feeling pulled in a lot of different directions as moms often, career moms often are, and just was sort of feeling myself on this brink of what I sort of describe as a midlife crisis. I knew it was coming. I knew I wasn't doing what I wanted to do. I was miserable. I was unhappy. I was feeling, uh, you know, not enough. I wasn't doing enough as a mom. Like I wasn't doing enough for myself. I wasn't pursuing some path that I was meant to be pursuing. And it was my own mother who was the one who looked at me one day and said, you need to take a break and do something for yourself. Why don't you take some time off work and write a novel?
had you been a writer? Had you enjoyed writing?
No, and that, well, I had always enjoyed writing when I was young, and I still have very early memories of stapling lots of pages of blank paper together and holding away in a corner of my room and writing stories about ponies and pirate kings and unicorns and fairies and all of those things that we so often do, and then we sort of grow out of. We get to school and we're told that these aren't viable career paths, that we're told that we have to make grown-up choices and do different things, and we sort of fall away from whatever creative yearnings that we have when we're young. And I think that happened to me somewhere in high school. I stopped writing. I lost my love for it, and I think because I was buried in so many other decisions and choices that we have to make about our careers and our futures and responsible adult decisions and all of these things. And so I just sort of fell away from it. And um, I did not do any creative writing for many, many years. And I think my mom just saw this piece of me that she remembered from when I was young that maybe she had clung to. And I had joked about it for many years. I said, one day I'm going to have a midlife crisis. I'm going to run away. I'm not going to run away and buy a sports car. I'm going to run away and write a novel. And she must have heard a kernel of truth in that I wasn't willing to acknowledge. And
Yeah.
she was the one who suggested that this was something I needed to do. And I didn't let myself believe it at first. I told her in very clear terms that I thought it would be irresponsible and it would be very selfish. I couldn't imagine making such a selfish decision for myself to walk away from my grown-up life, my bills and my obligations, and do something for me. I mean, how what a
Crazy
wild
talk.
thing, what a wild thing to imagine, a woman doing something for herself. And it was some time later that, I said, well, I'll think about it. And then I went home and I couldn't stop thinking about it. And eventually, a few weeks later, I called her back and I said, I think I'm going to do it. I think I'm going to try it.
Did you quit your job to do it, or did you try to kind of do a little side hustle for a while?
Eventually I did. It didn't take long before I made that choice. And I think
Mm.
it was just, whether or not it was a hasty decision, whether or not it was too soon, you know, I could argue either way on that. But at the time, it just felt like something I needed to do. And
Mhm.
so thankfully, I have a very, very supportive family. My spouse has been very supportive of this from the get go. There was never a question. I had the support to be able to do it. And I feel very fortunate in that because a lot of people
Mhm.
don't. And so I think that was really key for me in being able to make that decision. So I started taking just a sabbatical from work. I gave my
Mhm.
clients to my business partner. I took 2 months off. And really committed to doing it. My mother was my accountability partner. Every day she would ask me to show her. I'd have to present my chapter that I wrote that day, so I had a partner in this in terms of just someone to keep me on task. And at the end of my summer sabbatical, I went home and, my mom had been helping me with the children for the summer so I could do this. And I went home and my husband was so excited. He said, "Are you going back to work now?" Because at the time I was the breadwinner. So it was scary for us to,
Mhm.
even be talking about these kinds of things. And I said, well, I think we need to talk about that because I really enjoyed this. I feel like there's something here. And he asked, a very important question. He said, well, are you any good at it? I said, I don't know the answer to that question. And he said, well, how do we find out? And that was the question that sort of set us on the path. So I took a few months where I had a foot in both worlds.
Mhm.
I was working my career, but I was also enrolling in workshops and conferences, trying to figure out if I could establish myself, you know, a little bit more into the professional side of the industry to see what's involved, just to kind of educate myself and learn. And I came home from my first workshop feeling like this was something I was really encouraged. I felt like this is something I could do, and we made some major life overhauls to accommodate a massive career change. And in hindsight, I'm so glad we did. But it was hard and it was scary, and it was very uncertain for a while.
That's amazing though to have that.
Do you remember what workshop it was that kind of like clicked for you?
Yeah, I went to at the time when I started writing about and for young adults. So technically, I was writing in the children's literature market. And so my very first workshop was a craft centered workshop in Big Sur, California, that was sponsored by a literary agency, and they invited in agents and editors and publishers and people in the publishing world, and we would workshop in small groups, and everyone would bring samples from your manuscript to share. And that's real. This first time you do that, that's such a scary thing to, put your very first
Yeah,
work out there for
vulnerable.
someone professional in the industry to
Mhm.
potentially rip to shreds. It was a frightening thing. And I remember coming away from that feeling really encouraged that I knew I had a lot of work to do. I knew I had a very, very long growth arc there that I was going to have to, wade through, but feeling encouraged. And so I came home from that and told my husband that this was something I was willing to commit to, that it was a risk I was willing to take if we could make it work.
That's
That's
amazing.
so amazing to have that support, like you said, to make that huge change. Your mom was a teacher, right?
Yeah.
Was she a writer as well?
I think she had wanted to be for
Okay.
many years. And I know she had queried some children's books over the
Mm.
years, but
Hmm.
she will be the first person to admit that she does not like to revise. She doesn't, she doesn't, she considers herself more of a purist, that the words that come out, they come out perfect the first time. And I think, for those of us who do this as a career, we understand very painfully that revision is a massive part of this process. It is
Hmm.
a collaborative effort. There are a lot of people and voices and editors, and there's a lot of feedback involved in making a book shine. And so she'll be the first person to admit that while she loves to write and she loves to create, she's having a lot more fun watching me go through the pains of having to do it. But
Having to
yeah, I
listen to
think
editors and different people.
right. And so I think that's really hard for a lot of people, and give her a lot of credit for you know, recognizing that in herself, and making the decision to support me in that, and she loves to watch the process from behind the scenes, but she's very adamant that that first earliest ugliest draft of my work that she ever read will always be her favorite. So, but I think that's
Oh,
just, that's a mom thing.
yeah.
So how did you find your inspiration for your, like, when you sat down, what was your inspiration for your first piece? Like, where did your head go in that space?
I get that question a lot. It's probably the most common question that I'm asked is, where do I find my inspiration? And for me, I find inspiration everywhere. It comes at me in little tiny ways from lots of things. It could be a song lyric that grabs me in a certain way, or an image, or a person that I see in passing on the street that just, strikes me just so, or a conversation that I've overheard, art sometimes, pieces of art. So each of my novels, and I suppose we're at 10 now, each of them the inspiration has come from a completely different place. My very first novel was inspired actually by an overheard conversation in the workplace, that, you know, went in a very, very different direction, but it was just that that kernel, that sort of little seed of an idea that sort of nagged and gnawed at me until it grew and grew and grew, and then became the beginnings of a story. Finlay was my very favorite origin story. It's the one that I think everybody sort of associates with the book, because the book has these meta elements of, it's sort of reflected like a mirror within the book. But I was actually in a very crowded Panera Bread restaurant with my critique partners, and we were brainstorming a different book I was working on. And it was a particularly violent, scene that we were kind of hashing through out loud in a public space, not really thinking through, the fact that there were people at the tables all around us, when it became very clear as we're discussing plotting a murder, a fictional murder, that the woman at the table beside us became very uncomfortable, and she got up and left, just walked out of the restaurant, and she looked so so mortified. And we were laughing because we thought, well, what must she have thought of us? These assumptions that she must have made about who we were and what we were discussing. And that was sort of the kernel of the idea that brought about Finlay, this woman, an author who's mistaken for a contract killer because of an overheard conversation. And so sometimes inspiration from my stories can come from something that small,
Hmm.
and just it grows and grows and grows and becomes something much bigger.
Was it that idea that had you shift into an adult story? Will you still do young adult novels, or think you'll go back and forth?
I love them both. And I never say never. I always have ideas for other young adult novels floating about, in the desk drawer, or under the bed, or up here. So I could definitely see myself going back and doing more of those. But I'm loving what I'm doing right now. For me, there's really no difference in the process
Okay.
of writing about and for, whether I'm writing about and for young adults or writing about and for the mothers of young adults. For me, the process is very much the same.
Mm-hmm.
I'm really just dealing with the lens of life experience of the character that I'm seeing the story through. So, whether they're experiencing all of these things for the first time, the way a teenager does, or maybe like Finlay, they're re-experiencing all of these things later in their life, kind of rediscovering themselves. And for
Mm-hmm.
me, it's all fun and it's all wonderful. And the process of creating character is still just settling into the mind and heart of that character, and I'm asking the same questions of them. Who are
Right.
you at the beginning of the story, and who do I need you to be at the end of the story, and how do I get you there?
Mm-hmm.
And so the decision to write an adult novel really came from the fact that I fell in love with this concept, this idea of the story of this woman, and this had to be an adult character.
Right.
She'd be a
Right.
grown up. So the the decision to write an adult novel kind of came out of the necessity of that, not necessarily any cognizant choice that I was going from one genre to another. It was really about the book
Mm-hmm.
and a choice for that one specific book. But I think what I love most about writing about and for young adults is the freedom in it, the flexibility to bend and play with genre,
Mm-hmm.
which historically we have not been able to do in adult books. And so I sort of came into Finlay Donovan not thinking in those terms. I wasn't feeling very bound by genre. I just knew I wanted to write this book, and I was just writing it the way I felt like the story needed to be told. And it wasn't until I finished that I realized that I had written this genre bending story, and ooh, that might pose some problems. There might be some challenges here. But what I've come to realize is it's not the age group I'm writing for. It's that freedom that I love.
Mm-hmm.
And as long as I can write books that allow me the freedom to play and have fun with that, it doesn't really matter the age of the protagonist that I'm writing.
Did your editors have questions of, wait, this is supposed to be a mystery or a thriller? And then there are times where you literally laugh, like hoot out loud reading, where they like, I don't know, we don't know what to do with it.
Yeah, that was a lot of people don't realize how hard it was to get this series out of the gate at the
Really?
beginning.
Oh my gosh.
We had many, many, many more rejections than we had offers
Had you
when
written
I
just the one book when you pitched, or did you already have the second one kind of going?
no, I had written part of the first book.
Oh, okay. Okay.
And so we pitched it on like a partial manuscript because we
Hmm.
weren't really sure how this was going to go, and I was very, very grateful that we did get an offer from Minotaur. And but we went through many, many rejections before that point, and they were all very much the same. We love the voice, we love the character, we love the premise of the story, but we don't know what this is. Like, how do we
Hmm.
sell this? It doesn't fit cleanly on a shelf. And that was a little heartbreaking at the time because I thought, well, that's what's so fun about it.
Right.
Everyone should like, this is great. Like, but and shame on me after having been in sales and marketing for all those years. That should have been my first thought, but I was having so much fun with this story. And it wasn't until Minotaur made their offer and we started kind of talking it through, and they said, well, we've got some challenges here. We're not real sure what this story is or how we're going to position it in the market, but we know we like it and we want to try. So maybe let's experiment together and see how this goes. And the rest is sort of history. It's been fantastic. We've had a wonderful time doing it. So much fun. But it was a really phenomenal experience of a team coming together and taking a risk together, and it's been great.
When you're writing characters, how much of yourself do you put into those characters? Is it are they personas of people you want to be, or you are, or are you exploring a certain part of yourself? Like, what is your process like?
A lot of people ask me how much of you do we see in Finlay? And there are a lot of parts of Finlay, or of me in Finlay. My mom voice is very, very closely mirrored in Finlay's mom voice. My frustrated author voice totally mirrored in Finlay's frustrated author voice. I was in a very stressed out, frustrated place in my career when I started writing her character, and I think there's a lot of that kind of comes through in the story. And so I think there are parts of my voice, more so than any other book that I've written, where I could honestly say that there's a little bit of me there. I don't necessarily think that was an intentional choice, but I think to some degree it's one of the things that makes Finlay's voice work so well is it feels very authentic. There is an authentic tone in there
Mhm.
that readers relate to, and I'm glad for that.
I love when she's out doing things that she should not be doing and getting into trouble. She kind of goes back to, I just want to be on the couch with my kids, eating goldfish and snuggling and being ready for bed, and how like she gets, and we all feel that whether we're chasing bad guys, which most of us aren't, but even just at work or doing your thing, it's like I just want to be on the couch with my kids right now. So I love her, that, yeah, that realness that that she always kind of brings into it. Is Vero a character? Is that based on someone? I'm so excited for her little novelette
Yes,
to come
I
out.
am too. Yeah, Vero is a fan favorite. Um, and no, I can honestly say she wasn't based on any one particular woman that I know, but I will say she's based on many.
Okay.
And
Okay.
there are, I think it's not so much Vero as a character that she is, a particular person in my life. She and Finley's relationship to me
Hmm.
represents sort of, there's sort of the homage to some of the women in my own life who have lifted me up and supported me over the years in so many beautiful, amazing ways. And so it's more the spirit of her, I think, that I can say where I've kind of drawn that from, best friends, and my relationship with my mother,
Hmm.
my critique partners, and all of these people, specifically women in my life that I've leaned on, and who have leaned on me over the years, and um, that kind of the spirit of that unconditional friendship, the lifting up and supporting of other women. And that's sort of what I wanted to capture with her. And I feel like their characters do that so beautifully. Their voices are so different, and yet they complement so well. They're very different women at different points in their lives,
Hmm.
experiencing different struggles. And yet when they come together, they're awesome together, and almost unstoppable together, And so I think that's one of my favorite parts of the series.
Yeah, I love that their friendship is, or their working relationship, because has become a friendship, and they're yeah, they're a fun duo, and it's so much more interesting than, because we've seen that before, where there's a nanny or somebody that's there to kind of pick up the pieces, but this one, this relationship, they're comrade in arms most of the time, and I love. But I just pre-ordered the Vero novelette. Is that It's a short story, right?
Yeah. Hmm.
Yeah, the short story. Last week when I saw it, I was like, "Oh my god, that's so much fun that she's going to have her own little story."
Yeah, we've had a lot of interest and demand from readers to know more about her, to know
Yeah.
more of her backstory. And the stories they're Finley's stories. They're written from Finley's point of view. And so we thought this would be a really fun way to allow readers a little bit of a sneak peek into Vera's backstory, where she was when she and Finley first stumbled into each other. And so it's sort of a little treat that we've enjoyed being able to put out there for readers. I can't wait for everyone to get hold of it.
Do you engage your fans and your readers? How does that look for you? Do you go on Reddit and kind of like see what people are saying, or sneakily, or in public, and get their
Wow, you
feedback?
seem to do a lot of
Platform.
public appearances
Do you
with
know what I
your
mean? Like,
fans.
how does that, when you start thinking about your stories and you hear, the feedback, where do you tend to get it from at this point? Or is it just social media?
Yeah, Finley fans are very vocal and very enthusiastic. I
Yeah.
find that many of them tend to congregate on Instagram. So Instagram has sort of become Finley's and by default my second home. We spend a lot of time there because fans are they outreach directly to me there in very vocal ways. And so, I'm constantly hearing from them. They're doing cover cosplays. They're posting their reviews and their photos and their books on vacation and all of these wonderful things. As far as feedback goes, though, I love hearing from readers. I love the enthusiasm. It kind of reminds me of what I do, why I do what I do. But as far as feedback goes, when it comes to craft and actually writing the stories, I have to be really careful about, you know, where I draw that feedback and when I let it in, because this
Yeah.
is such a collaborative process creatively with so many different people behind the scenes. And ultimately, at the end of the day, what I've learned through this process of writing a longer series is that um, if I'm having fun writing the books, the readers are going to have fun and reading them. They're going to enjoy them no matter what. And but if I let myself get you know beat around by too many reviews, or people who tag me in negative reviews, or if I listen to everybody's feedback, I'll never get anywhere. Like, I
Right,
really
right.
kind of have to stay true to myself, my character, my agent, my process, um, and be selective in where I bring in that feedback. I love to hear from readers when they love the books, but when it comes down to actually creating the books, crafting the stories, working behind the scenes on them, that's a different room of
Yeah.
different voices and
Mhm,
it's a very small room of voices that I allow in. So, and I think that's kind of out of necessity.
mhm.
What does your process look like as you're starting to come up with new ideas, or the next Finley novel or adventure?
My process usually starts with kind of a big 30,000 foot view of the story I picture myself telling. This is the character arc, and this is the mystery, and this is where we're going with this next story, and kind of batting those ideas around with my agent and my editor, to make sure that I'm sort of thinking in a manner that's going to be productive. That I'm kind of thinking through all the potential pitfalls, that I'm thinking through the series and where we're going next. And then once I kind of have a rough idea at that point, I usually give myself a couple of months to knock out a first draft, like a really, really messy first draft, and just give myself permission to sort of get the story out in its first iteration. A lot of times that will involve a lot of brainstorm sessions with critique partners and writing buddies when I get stuck or I'm not 100% sure I'm going in the right direction. Some of the most the best ways I find in terms of lighting my own fire and sort of motivating myself are talking those through with sound, my creative sounding boards. And then at that point, usually once I have a first draft in place where I think I've kind of got the structure of the story together, then it goes to agents and editors for that initial set of notes. And then at that point, it's a lot of revision and a lot of rewriting, until we get the story ironed out to the point where we can sort of lay it on the page in the way that the reader might see it.
Yeah.
But I would say the lion's share of my process is really revision. It's really not so
Okay.
much writing as it is rewriting.
Interesting.
And I heard for years that great books aren't written, they're rewritten over and over and over again, and I believe that. I wholeheartedly believe that. I've never written a great first draft. It's just
Even if
never
your mom
happened.
says otherwise.
My mom will say otherwise, but I can tell you, and my editors will tell you, my agent will tell you, I've never written a great first draft. They're horrible. And I think for most of us that's the case. But I think part of the beauty and the fun in this process is taking that sort of ugly mess and turning it into something fun and fantastic. And it's not something I think that we can necessarily do alone. I really think sometimes we have to get outside of our own head and bring in the feedback from lots of different directions in order to be able to see our own work clearly.
Are you a 9 to 5 writer, or I've done 3 pages and that's my limit for the day? How's your scheduling process when you're really in it?
My scheduling process sort of came to be out of necessity as my children were growing up. And they're older now, they're grown now, but I've sort of fallen into a schedule, a habit, that, sort of came to be over the course of years. But for a really long time, I was homeschooling my kids. We were traveling abroad,
Mhm.
and so I was homeschooling my kids during the day, and that sort of eat up all my work day. So my work day would start at night, usually after dinner, and I would work from like 7 to 3, and then sleep from 3 to 9 and get up and do it again. And I did that for so many years that that's sort of become my
Oh,
ritual.
interesting.
So I find my most creative time, the time when I most enjoy writing, is actually at night, when the house is
Okay.
quiet, when everyone is asleep or doing their own thing, the phones aren't ringing, the emails aren't coming in. And it's, for me, I'm a quiet writer. I sort of need that very I need my mind to be a quiet space. I'm really easily
Mhm.
distractible. So I find my days tend to be publicity and promotion and interviews and sort of the business, the mechanics end of what I do. And then my creative side of what I do, I usually get to do at night. And that's just me time at that point.
When you're writing, are there ways that you find yourself like so in your head that you ground yourself? Like, are there things that you go and do that say like, okay, I'm taking a 5 minute break and I'm going to meditate or go for a walk? Obviously you're not doing walks at 3 in the morning, I would think.
We hope not.
But are there things that settle your mind and kind of get you back to like grounded and centered to write again that you do?
Yeah, I mean, there are times when I hit that wall. It's people ask me, sometimes Finlay just sits and stares at the screen for a couple hours and nothing is happening. Is that real? Yes, that's real. I can tell you with 100% certainty, I have had nights where I have stared at the screen for hours and just had no sense of, where is this paragraph going? Or I've retooled the same paragraph 3 hours and I'm still not happy with it. There are days like that. And I find that when I am stuck in that way, when I really can't produce, and some people call it writer's block,
Yeah.
whatever it is, when I feel like I just can't produce, at that point, usually the only thing that works for me is getting out of the chair. I have to get away from the computer and do something else. And I find for me, what can really kind of get those wheels moving again is research, hands-on research away from the computer. So, not relying on Google, not relying on other books, but actually physically getting out into the world and experiencing something that shakes something loose. Whether I'm going on a field trip or taking a class or or going to interview somebody or have lunch with somebody or go to a convention and be around other creative people or have a brainstorming session with my critique buddies. Sometimes it's just going someplace quiet away, where I can sit in a quiet space, whether I'm driving, or sitting by a creek somewhere or whatever it is. I just feel like I have to get out of the office, away from behind the desk, and something shakes loose. Inevitably, something shakes loose, and then I can come at it fresh again.
I know book number 4 is coming out next winter, right, in 2024.
Yes.
And then was it true what I read that 5, 6, and 7 are confirmed?
Yes, 5, 6, and 7 are confirmed.
That's
So
amazing. And do you have, I'm like, how does that inform like what you what you're doing for 4, or how does that what you're doing for 5, when you know these characters are going to keep moving on?
Yeah, so many people ask me, how many books are there going to be? And, did you always know it was going to be a long running series? And the answer is no. At the beginning, I didn't even know it was going to be a book to be able to plan for a long running series.
Right.
So many people are surprised to find out that the length of a series often depends on the readership
Mm.
and the sales. So if we're selling really well, if we have a huge readership, if the books are very, very popular, it sort of guarantees a longer lifespan of the series. So I get excited anytime we renew for more books,
Right,
because
right.
it was never a given. I can't ever take it for granted that there will be more books. It really depends on my readers and their willingness to keep investing in the series. So it was really exciting, but it's also hard from a planning standpoint to inform, to let that inform my plans for how I come at the books. The best I can do really is, as I'm writing, I try to leave myself little breadcrumbs for later, little things
Right.
out there to play with later. So I don't always tie up every loose end. There are going to be
Hmm.
one or two loose
Hmm.
ends that I leave lingering out there for a rainy day. And I kind of I like to know where the next book starts as I'm finishing the book I'm working on,
Hmm.
so that I have some sense of where I'm going next. But I can never take for granted that there will be 20 or 30 books,
Right, right.
or even 12. Like I'm grateful for every book, because it means that the readers were willing to invest and keep reading.
Do you, when you're working on a series like this, and I have no idea, do you work on other books, or is this 100% like to in the year, to like if you want a book each year that you really have to only focus on this series?
Yeah, that's a great question. I have done 2 books a year before.
Okay.
It's hard. It takes a toll. It's a lot of work, and it's a little bit of a juggling act. I was doing a YA, wrapping up a YA duology at the
Hmm.
same time as starting the first 2 Finlay books, and so they were overlapping, and so it is possible. But what I've found is that Finley is become so popular and so successful that it's sort of a full-time job in
Yeah,
itself.
yeah. Well, like
And
you said, the social media of it and all the pieces of her. Yeah.
Right. And I'm super grateful for that. So I'm very, very happy to do it. But as a creative, I also find that there are times when I need those little palette cleansers
Hmm.
too. So I always
Hmm.
have these little things, little projects I'm working on the side, whether it's the Vero short story that, has been a super fun little diversion in the
Right.
series, or, a trunked project that I put away 10 years ago that I'll pull out and play with once in a while, just to kind of sharpen the pencil a little bit. It's to
Mhm.
give me something else.
I read an article, and this was one of the questions I was going to ask you about the police academy. I was like, do they really have police academy conferences for civilians? And then I read that you did go to one, but I also was thinking of, was your dad was a prison warden
Yeah.
growing up in a maximum, was that, did that in like, did you love mysteries, and did you love thrillers and that world before, or was that informed by, I'm sure your dad didn't bring a lot of his work home with him, but was that informed by what you heard or learned growing up, kind of like your mom was with your writing and your education?
Yeah, I think it's hard not to have some of that bleed over.
Yeah.
There were a lot of lessons that come from those experiences and the dinner table conversations. It's hard not to bring your work home with you.
Right, right.
And so, but yeah, my father was a maximum security prison warden, and did that for many, many years. And there were stories that, whether we could hear him on the telephone at night dealing with a
Mhm.
situation at work,
Mhm.
or a dinner conversation that he was having with my mom as we were all together, those we sort of take in. All the kids
Yeah,
are
the
like little
interest. Yeah.
sponges, we
Right,
take
right.
all of that in. And so I do think that I had maybe a fascination from a younger age with crime stories
Right.
and the people who commit them, and our are the way that we talk about and portray good versus bad. And and I think so I do think that some of that informed both my reading preferences and my
Mhm.
and probably my writing preferences even as an adult.
Yeah, I was gonna. What do you read? What are you reading or watching that whether it lets you have escape or informs you? Do you have some favorites out there right now?
I do. I'm always, taking in, like, whether it's TV or movies or books. I'm always reading. I'm always watching. I'm fascinated. I'm fascinated with storytelling in
Hmm.
all of its
Hmm.
forms.
Hmm.
And my kids are both gamers, which
Oh,
is
okay.
fascinating to me. I'm not a gamer, but I love watching them. My son's studying game design, and one of the things we talk about is the storytelling elements even there.
It's
So
amazing, right?
it's amazing. And so there are so many different ways to tell stories, and I love it all. But one of the things that um, I tend to read the way that I write
Mm-hmm.
across genre. I don't necessarily stick to one, and I bounce around a lot.
Hmm.
So I can go from, a rom-com to a very dark thriller to an atmospheric horror to historical fiction to a cozy mystery, and then start all over. It I love it all. I
Hmm.
love great storytelling in a variety of different forms. And so it's not unusual for me to have stacks of books lying around that cross all the genres. But I
Right.
love that because I never get bored. Everything is always fresh. And yeah, this is the same with television. I can go from dark fantasies to light mysteries and romance and bounce around. I I think that's one of the beauties of taking in art is there's so many different kinds, and it's all inspiring to me.
Right, right. There's so much great content right now. I don't, I, I'll talk to somebody and they'll be like, how do you read so many books? How do you do that? And I'm like, I'll get in a mode where it's like reading, 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 reading. And then, 2 weeks later, it's content, television, 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 and then fit a movie in there and fit something back in there. But I agree. There's so much great content. I swear one day my husband is going to come in with my Amazon order or I have this lovely little local bookstore and he's going to be like, enough already. There is no human way possible that you are going to finish this. My to be read pile is just like, it's growing, 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 growing. But I'm like, no, I promise I'll get through them. I promise I will. It'll be a snowy weekend and I'll catch up on everything. It was so nice to meet you and for you to be here. I'm so excited. I have one more question I want to ask you, and I know when I've seen on Instagram and seen that people ask about Finlay coming to life, whether in another way. What is your kind of overall feeling about when beloved characters in novels? Because we all use our imagination, and I was thinking about like really great interpretations like Harry Potter, where somebody was like, oh my God, it met every expectation of reading the book, to others where, there's a zillion different opinions of, oh, I loved it. Oh no, I pictured it differently. What is your feeling about bringing kind of a beloved character to a visual art?
I would love to see it happen, and I think I've always seen sort of the adaptations and the original content as two separate things.
Okay.
Even as a consumer, I see them as two
Hmm.
separate things,
Hmm.
and I try not to put so much pressure on my expectations that they be exactly the same, because they
Hmm.
really are, just by their very nature, going to be different. But I think they can both be unique and special and wonderful and still capture the heart and the essence of the story. And so, when I think about all of my dreams of seeing Finley on the screen, because I think so many of us do dream about these
Oh yeah.
things. Really what my biggest hope for it is that one day we would capture the spirit and the heart of Finlay Donovan, and
Right.
that's in whatever form it takes. and with, whatever cast and whatever adaptations we see out there, that they would capture the spirit of this book and this character and these two women, who I think are the heart of it. So that's my daydream. That's all I
Yeah,
want.
yeah. No, there's such great visuals and so many great characters. For her sister would be so fun to
Yeah.
see, and her hunky police officers and lawyers and all the men in her life, even her annoying ex-husband. We can have Stephen. We can love Stephen somehow.
There's a wonderful cast. There's a wonderful
There's,
cast here to
yeah,
play with.
somewhere out there.
Yeah, exactly.
All right. Well, Elle, thank you so much for being with us today. It was so exciting to meet you. We're very, very excited about the new book. We love the books, love the reveal of the cover art. It's just such a fun, it's such a fun series, and it's so nice meeting you. And thank you for being so generous with your time with us. I hope that we can do something where we meet in person sometime soon.
That would be fantastic. Thank you for having me. I had a lot of fun.
If you enjoyed this episode, subscribe and leave a review on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. To stay up to date with In Her Words, join the conversation by following Women in Entertainment on our social channels and subscribe to our weekly newsletter at womenandentertainment.com.